Witness history in the making. The McIntyre Mini Globe Race 2025. Small boat, huge adventure.
Okay, so we're finally here, and this whole screen could blow up in our face. Hopefully, you can hear me. I've been at this for an hour trying to set up this screen to get this live happening, and hopefully, it's working. I've got a feeling there's a bug in the software for this lot. It's a bit hard to say exactly what's going on. But anyway, brief explanation. I had it all set up. We wanted to talk about Windvanes because there's a few things going on, and they've got a picture gallery here to put up, and the tracker and me. And then today, I've also given all the entrants a link to cut in on this live, so we can have a split screen with me and entrants coming in live. Thanks, I am. Sounds good. That's cool. Hi, John. Thanks for that. So they can hit this link and they come up in my console down the bottom, and I can bring them up on the screen at any time, and we can have an interaction. But I gave them instructions on what to do as well. I said, first of all, they've got to call me on WhatsApp. So if it's in 2 hours' time, I set up the live, and the entrants will, and I'll confirm, right, I'll set it up, and then as soon as I've got it set up with the bits, I can call them back and say, right, hit the link now and come in. So, of course, while I'm setting this up, and I had troubles doing that, Entrant just pops up live because he's done this before with the GGR. So I wasn't ready for him. And in the end, I changed the intro to say Entrant's going to be there. And then when I hit the save it, the whole thing disappeared. So then I've got, of course, Jane is really impressed because it's 1 o'clock in the morning over there now. And I've had probably 5 different calls with her trying to sort out everything that's going on. And there's some things just were not working. And at the moment, I've jury rigged it, so it's suggesting I might have little images coming down the corner of this screen if it all goes pear shaped. So if we lose it part way, that's it. What I'm going to be talking about is obviously we'll do the tracker update, and I'll tell you what's going on because Renaud is about to take off, and a few other things going on. I've spoken to a couple of the entrants and got messages about what they're up to, and there's some dramatic moves going on at the moment with Windvanes. And so I then thought, to try and explain that, I need a bit of an armory to get into the issues with Windvanes. By way of an explanation, Windvanes are a bit of I won't call them my passion. They're not my passion at all. But I've been involved with Windvanes for a long, long time, as many of you will probably know from previous discussions about Windvanes here and in our other events and stuff. And I'm not an expert at it. It's just my own experience of what's going on all different types of vanes. And it's a big subject when you're sailing solo around the world, especially on a 580, which is a unique type of boat. Then it is an important subject at the best of times, but even more so with a little boat. So as I say, there's a few interesting things going on there. And whilst there's not a lot of boats out sailing right now, they're about to. So we'll go straight into the tracker, look at what's going on there, and talk about plans of entrance and stuff. And then we'll come back and I'll talk about Windvanes and show you some different types and some of the my opinion on some of the ways they're interacting with the entrants and what they're actually going through. So let's get into the tracker and let's hope this thing works. And I don't know why, but we should be now going on to the tracker. There it is. One of the problems I had was that the tracker was tiny. It wasn't sucking in. It's taken on a different format there. Anyway, you're on the tracker. I'm on the tracker now, and I don't know what that big black band is, why that's turned up, but it has. So we'll work with that. I'll just put the wind in there. Yep, there's the wind. I put the Latin long grid in, and I'll pick it up a bit. We'll go with the sailors that are out there right now, which is only 4 boats still heading towards the Marquises. I'm going to get Gary in there. Oh, geez, he's a long way back. We can just do it. Okay, so Josh is still making his way, 3.8 knots and 102-mile day. I would have thought it would be a bit more than that by the look of the colour there. The breeze is quite solid. Gary's 3.6 knots, 100 miles, so they're doing the same. So maybe Gary's barnacles aren't such an issue. I'll go straight for the mileage right now, just to give you an idea of what's going on. So at the moment, Josh is 109 miles out, so it's going to be about 24 hours from now, and we should be seeing Josh close to coming in. And Gary's 450 miles, so probably up to 4 days yet before he makes it in. So you can work your own ETAs from there. And then if we scale this back, get rid of that, we can look at the weather. Now with this one, Renault's about to take off, so we can look at what's happening here as well. And then Dan will be out about 15 hours later, just so we don't have to go through the weather again. So, but as you can see, it's a little bit light here. There's a little bit of colour. It's not a solid dark green, but it still looks reasonable. I thought Josh would be making better than that, but then again, sometimes this graphic is wrong. Certainly, there's light winds over here. Peeler's making ground to Upu, Upu, the island of Upu, whatever. So just wouldn't be sailing fast, but it's potentially a light wind there at the moment, and we'll just walk that forward for a day. Still pretty light once you get out of there, but it fills in a bit. So we went through the 5th. It's just strengthening on the 6th, but it's still not solid. It's just gentle breezes, and it's fun sailing. Anyway, they'll have it on the port quarter, those that are about to take off. So that's through to the 7th, and Josh and Gary are not going to get any big boost in speed. So about 100 miles a day. So yeah, that's pretty much as we expected for their ETA. So a day and about 3 or 4 days for Gary. Okay, now the boys, they're on top of each other. So they're obviously sailing together. So I'm not even trying to bury them, but they're in there somewhere. So Mike and John on top of each other together, both doing 3 knots, 86-mile day. I'm wondering about the currents there for that one, because it looks as if it's a bit more solid. Currents helping them as well. Jeepers. That's kind of interesting. I'm thinking that it's not as fast as I would have expected. Maybe it's just me, or maybe the graphic is wrong. But it looks like it's 10 to 15 at least, and 10 to 15 they should be doing more than 3 knots. So maybe it's not even nighttime there; it's daytime. So not sure. Anyway, that's the weather from. There it is. Okay, so this is today's weather. That's why they're doing 3.8 knots. There's not a lot of wind. It's very light, so that is correct. And the current's even now a little bit less current. Yeah, so that. Sorry, I was on the weather for 3 days' time. So coming back to the wind, if we push that through a day, a little bit breeze coming, so they'll pick up tomorrow, and on the 6th, they got more breeze, so they'll be back to 120-mile days. They'll probably do 100 a bit tomorrow, 110, and then they should be up to 120 the next day. So that'll push them on, and they're still probably 2,300 miles away. So no use working about the ETAs. Okay, so what's happening back here? A bit of movement in the camp, and people are doing different things. I'll talk about that when I'm back up on the screen. But you can see the boat movements, and if you saw the posts that I put in underneath this, generally up in Nuka Hiva, we've only got Dan up there at the moment. And here's the issue. Basically, everyone's come in down the bottom here. They've all entered there. Once they've entered, basically the regulations are normally when you leave an area, even when you've entered the country, because this is all French Polynesia, but when you're a cruising boat, sometimes some places usually have a situation to get like a cruising permit. And whenever you get to another official port of entry, you have to sort of check in. It's a lot simpler because you enter the country, do all your customs, quarantine, immigration, and then sometimes when you move to another port of entry, they ask you to check in with the police, just a simple, oh, hi, here I am, so they can keep an eye on you. A lot of that's being superseded by AIS now. You're supposed to, in some countries, you have to have an active AIS, and you have to have it on all the time, so they can see where you are. They use marine traffic, and they know where you are, and just for their own purposes. Anyway, the case here, we've been told that Tahiti Crew, who's the agent that's basically each of the entrants has to be involved with, have been told that once they enter here, they don't need to do anything else until they depart finally from Papeete after the next pit stop. Okay, and I think that will hold. It may hold true for all of them, but I'm not on the ground there. I haven't asked Tahiti crew, but sometimes if you're not a member of the EU, because French Polynesia is sort of connected to the EU, sometimes you've still got to do an official exit. So each of the entrants will tackle that and see how it goes. But assuming you don't have to do an official departure, the rule is that you can only leave from an official entry port. So you can't go over this island up here or this one down here or wherever. But the 3 entry ports are up here in Nuka Hiva and in Upu. It's Uopou. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. It's Upu, something like that. This is the official one, and so is the entry port here. So if you then look at what the deal is, if you draw a line between, say, Nuka Hiva and here, bearing in mind that that's closer to the mark, and this route rum line is going straight to Papeete. That's the course that you need to do. You can do the numbers very, very easily, and I did it last week, just to see what was going on, what would be the best thing to do. And Renaud was the first one to head out there, so he's basically gone to this island to sit there, wait for departure, which will be imminent. He should be. I haven't done an actual day count back yet, but it's the closest point to Papeete, and I worked it out, including the distance to get out of the anchorage. Because if you look at let's look at the original port of entry here. If you're sitting here and about to take off, you have to come out around the headland, around the corner here, and then head down in this general heading here, like on the rum line towards Papeete. So when you do that, you've got a little bit up and around. You've got a wind shadow there, so you go over this way, blah blah blah. So I took into account the wind shadow there. And then when you're over in Upu, and Hakahua, this one here, it's pretty interesting because you've got 2 options. The course is generally southwest, so you could just come out here and head down. Then you've got a little bit of a wind shadow maybe, or you could bail out, sneak through the corner here and stay down on the windward side and then trick around. But it all adds a little bit rather than just doing a measurement direct to the port. So when I calculated all that, and then you've got the same up here with Nuka Hiva. This one, Nuka Hiva, is probably the easiest to get out of because you basically just come down a little bit to there, and then you're heading southwest and you're in the clear. There's no wind shadow. But doing the numbers, it works out that if we say Nuka Hiva up here, if that was the datum point, the quickest is Upu, whatever. Anyway, coming on down, I'll just shrink this down. Between the 3, this is that's the datum. That's absolutely the closest. And Nuka Hiva is about 13 miles extra distance, right, if you get technical. And it depends how you measure getting out and around the corner. But basically, it's about 13 miles difference, like longer. And out of the entry port back here, where everyone's come in so far, to leave there, you'll actually sail an extra 27 miles. If you're over here, when you leave, it's an extra 27 miles. You can't leave from here because it's not the official port of entry. So those that are racing and keen to race, you'll see them all bail out and head over there because it's going to save time. If you say an average of 5 knots, it's 2.5 hours. You're saving 2.5 hours out of Nuka Hiva if you don't leave from Nuka Hiva, and you're saving nearly 5.5 hours. It takes you 5.5 hours at 5 knots to leave here and catch up to where you would have been if you're in Upu. Upu, all right? So Pila's on her way over there now. She's sailing at, what's she got here? 2.8 knots. Here you can see there's not much wind there, but she'll be just drifting along. As long as she gets in daylight, that's fine. That's easy. To give you an idea, I think I've showed you Nuka Hiva, and the other one that side. This side's a little bit interesting. It's like a shipping port there for offloading all their gear. On this particular picture, that's as good as it can get. There's a trading ship in there or something like that. It looks like there's some mining stuff going on over here. I don't know whether there is, but probably not, but there's some serious roads going over to the little settlements on the other side as well. It's a small one. It's a nice little settlement there with bits and pieces. So probably some palm trees, not as wide a beach a bit, not sure. But it's only a small spot, reasonably protected, but it's a good spot to leave from. So that's the real interest in going there. Okay, so I think that's as much as that we need to talk about there. So I'll come back here and hopefully this works. Yep, I'm on there, so I'll get rid of this. Okay, so what's going on? There's the guys. First of all, I've only received some navigation notes from Canada, which is good. So there's still a few entrants that are coming to me with their navigation. Christian's got to do some stuff. Gary will do stuff when he's in. Jasmine's got to send me some stuff. John, when he gets in, John's thousands of miles away. He's still got to give me some stuff. And also Dan is just wrapping up with bits, and also Adam. And mainly plotting sheet stuff. They all know what to do, but they've got to actually do it underway and all that sort of stuff, and then give me the gear to check it to make sure they are actually able to work out actual fixes using celestial observation. Everyone's pretty happy. They're all going to get time to stretch a leg. Haven't heard much at all from Pila. We're just still waiting for photos and videos, but she's been off the air a bit, and must be happy with the boat because she's left on the other side and getting ready to stay organised in bits. But the interesting one was with Christian's trying to obviously sort out his battery electrical system. I haven't heard. He moved out. I thought it was quite funny. He did a post as soon as he got in about the little hotel room he's got, or with a proper toilet and shower and this, that, and the other. I think he'll be happy to get into all that. And he's got a few things to sort out. I'm not sure how the services are helping with electrical. He might be able to do it himself. I'm not sure. We'll find out when he lets us know. Adam's got to try and sort out the crack on the mount for the South Atlantic wind vane, which is not a big one. It's only a little crack, but it's important to fix it up. And then stop the wobble maybe as well. So he's got a few little things to do. And then Kerry's been pretty busy because what happened there is he's decided to fit an Aries wind vane on the back of the boat. So here we go again. Now, Kerry's wind vane status from day one has been a bit of a nightmare. And now he's got even more work to do because he's taken off his South Atlantic and he's given it to Adam for parts not for parts, because he'd made some modifications which were really good. And what Kerry stressed to me was, he says, look, this is really, I'll summarise it very shortly. And he says, look, the South Atlantic's okay. It steers the boat. But he's caught between two worlds. And I really think he's grabbing it. This is just my opinion here for the moment. He's, as you know, when he left Antigua, he'd had stuff being serviced and he was working on his dagger boards and working on modifying the wind vane. But it wasn't done, so he sailed from Antigua to Panama without his wind vane. Then he got most of it sorted in Panama, and to my mind, it hasn't broken down. It's steering, but with a servo pendulum, you're wandering around a bit. That's part of the course because he's sailing hard with performance, and now he's gone built some braces and put an Aries wind vane on, which is on a par with vanes like the Hydra vane, where it's designed and built for a much bigger boat. So it's quite heavy and solid, and it's got a big servo pendulum and all that sort of stuff. It's like an elephant, and they're fantastic. My opinion for wind vanes, there's so many different ones to choose from in the world, right? And they all basically work. But my two favourites obviously are Hydra vane, and for normal boats, for cruising boats and bits and pieces, GGR, call it what you like. My two favourites, personal opinion, Hydra vane or Aries. And the reason for that is that if you decide you want a auxiliary rudder system, the Hydra vane is one of the best on the market. There's not a lot of auxiliary rudder systems on the market, but Hydra vane, without doubt, is a leader in its class. For servo pendulum, I really like Aries. I used to be an Aries agent. I knew Nick Franklin very well, the guy who designed and conceived the Aries wind vane, and I sold them for many, many years in Australia. They're bulletproof. I could tell you stories that make your head fall out, in terms of around the world and how good they are and how they just keep going. But they are big and bulky, and weight is an issue on Tinker, but they work really well. They're well engineered, really strong. They just keep going. So then, to come back to the context of the 580, I was the first one to admit I'm surprised that there's hydrovanes on the 580 because they're generally a big solid unit meant for bigger boats, but with the smaller blade, the rudder blade in the water, and smaller tubes and shafts, it saves a bit of weight. And the 580 can carry a lot of weight. The general design concept of the 580 is to carry its own weight, right? So about you can put 700 kilos on a 580 and it'll still sail quite well. You try not to do that, but it will do it. So if you put it on, 30 kilo from 40 kilo Windvane, it's not the end of the world, but there you go. It's at the back of the boat. So it's interesting comment from Kerry that the South Atlantic's been working okay. It's been working well. He thinks it'll keep going, but he wants to swap to the Aries. Possibly, and I didn't ask him why, but possibly because it's bigger and stronger, and there was one there, and on a cruising boat the guy wanted to sell, and so he sold it to him. I don't know what the deal was, whatever. He's got an Aries. But here's my honest opinion: the issue is the principle of the Windvane steering the boat, and the South Atlantic is a servo pendulum, a swinging servo pendulum that pulls ropes. It doesn't steer the boat. The pendulum's not a rudder. It just goes from left to right, swinging in the water, boom, boom, like that. And the ropes move the tiller. Now, the tiller on the 580 is pretty simple, okay? And I would have thought, generally, the servo blade of the South Atlantic should be able to develop enough power. And here's the issue. The servo blade on an Aries is much bigger, okay? And so that's okay. It's a bit longer as well. So as the boat's healing, it might develop a little bit more power, on situations where you need it. But then if the boat's healing and starts to lose it, and because you've got too much sail area up, you're still going to get this zigzag course because the boat can only cope with so much sail area. So it doesn't matter if you've got 20 kilos of thrust on the tiller or whether you've got 10 kilos of thrust on the tiller. It's still going to want to go like that because the boat will override. If you've got a bigger boat, then yes, you need the extra thrust to keep it going. I never saw when I had the South Atlantic, I very rarely saw the servo blade coming out of the water to correct steering input if the boat was recoverable. If you get hit with a big gust and you're going over, yes, you only have that much of the tip in there, but you're going pretty fast. And so it's still developing enough power to move the tiller. It's just that the boat goes that way. So it's really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how Kerry's thinks of the performance with a big, bulky Aries on the back that is still only a servo pendulum system, right? And whether it really does have a big input. And I think so that'll be interesting to watch. Now, what I want to do here, without boring you, is the weekend. On weekends, I take liberties. I'm going to try and put this in here. Yes. Okay, so here's an Aries Windvane. I have no idea which Aries. This is on coconut. Okay, I have no idea which Aries Kerry's got. I didn't ask him. This is the historic, usual Aries Windvane. It bolts on. You've probably seen them. Bolts on with tubes. It's really big, powerful, strong. Big servo blade in the water here, going up and down, solid as a rock. I've got anyway, yeah. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. I'll just see which way. I've got some other pictures here. Wrong way. Let's just show you a Navic in a minute. I'll go the other way. Okay. So what I should say is that Aries there is called the original Aries. It's just like a traditional Aries. Back in the when was it? It was late 70s. Nick designed what I believe is the best Windvane that's ever been conceived in the world, which was this one. It's an Aries, and I won't go into the fine details, but it's called a lift-up Aries. You wouldn't believe it, but all of that structure there, except for the mounting tubes, pulls apart into small pieces with quick-release pins, and you can put it all in a locker, a normal cockpit locker. And the way it does it, the vertical post holding the flip-flop vane, you just pull the things apart, it comes off, and you've got the base mounting there. You undo slide a couple knobs off each side of the back, and the whole thing pivots up. So the servo blade, as you tip that 180 degrees towards the transom of the boat, the servo blade's up in the air. You can then just pull pins and the whole lot comes off, and then you pull the knobs out a bit further and the whole mounting frame comes off and into the boat. So effectively, the entire wind vane is now on the cockpit floor, all in pieces. And if you've got to do any work, you can do the work, and when it's finished, you just assemble the pieces back together, flop it over. It's fantastic. And John Sanders, a very famous Australian solo sailor, he did a solo circumnavigation in an SNS 34. He did then a double solo non-stop circumnavigation and again. So he did one by itself. He then did two non-stop, just went around the world twice. And eventually he did three versions around the world in Peribanu, which is a bigger boat, a 40-footer. Three circumnavigations without stopping. And I was, had Aries all the way. I supplied Aries and bits and pieces. And it just didn't fail the whole way around. It was just amazing. But they are big, heavy systems, and they will perform perfectly. And this is the other issue. That will perform perfectly. It'll do all the things it's meant to do. And then it comes down to the issue of the ropes that you're pulling to turn the little tiller. Is it going to give an advantage over the South Atlantic? So then, now I'm going to go through the other one. And as an idea, I mean, you can see there's wind pilots on the boat. A couple of wind pilots in the fleet. Okay, so who's got the wind pilot? So Jacob's got a wind pilot. And also Christian has got a wind pilot, and that's using a servo pendulum system as well. And the South Atlantic is a servo pendulum system. This is another one. It's called the Sea Feather, made in the UK, which is another servo pendulum system. Very simple. That timber servo blade in the water there, that just rotates a bit and then comes up to the surface, right? The port or starboard, and there's a series of ropes that turn the tiller. So I can confidently say to you that the South Atlantic, the Wind Pilot, the Sea Feather, and the Aries are using exactly the same principles. It comes back to pulling ropes, right? When I look at this one here, it's interesting. That Sea Feather looks as if it's installed a little bit high, because it's only using the bottom half maybe of the servo blade. I may be wrong. This is off the Sea Feather official website. But if that was me, I would drop that down a bit, because you're wasting a bit of power. And as the boat heels, you can imagine, the pendulum swinging one way, you're only going to be bouncing the tip on the water. But that highlights the fact that all you're trying to do is turn the tiller, and it's a really light, simple tiller on the 580. So a bit like the Hydrovane is a mammoth thing, and Aries on the back of a 580 is a mammoth thing as well. So to summarise that, there's a servo pendulum system. They're all going to do the same. They all work. Wind Pilot works. South Atlantic works. The Sea Feather would work. But then it comes down to one of my favourite wind vanes, and it's the first wind vane I ever had on my little boat Sky. This is another shot of the Sea Feather. You see, it does the same things. The pendulum rudder just pivots up out of the way. You can see the flip-flop vane at the top. And, you can see the arm coming up for the lines. Hopefully it's not getting boring, but it's the weekend. So this is a really interesting story here. The Navic was a Plastimo made by Plastimo. It was a very smart principle for a servo pendulum system, because coming back to the idea of just pulling ropes. So what do you need to pull the ropes? You need deflection of the servo blade. Now, this is the servo blade. You see it at the bottom there, right? You can see the waterline. You can see the transom. But this operates, no one else has done this principle, and it's really clever. You've got the shaft coming up the top, and you've got a very small flip-flop vane. It's the smallest in the business. It's tiny. It's only probably less than, hang on, I've got to take me here. It's probably less than 30 centimetres high. It's absolutely tiny. The reason for that flip-flop vane is not turning the servo blade here, down the pendulum. It's turning the trim tab on the back of the pendulum. I don't know whether you can see that, but it's very clever. So that servo blade there free floats on the shaft, and the flip-flop vane, all it has to do is turn that little trim tab. The little trim tab forces the servo blade around, and then it paravanes to the surface. And then there's another really critical thing to this, why it's without doubt one of the most efficient for energy transfer, because what you're doing is you're transferring the flip flop, the movement of the servo blade has to just pull ropes, right? Now, if I can get the next shot up. Okay, so this is the components. This is a Navic on the ground. So there's your shaft there with the flip-flop vane at the top, and there's a little arm on the bottom right-hand corner here. When you bolt that on the top of this frame, you can see you've got the mounting frame on the transom, and you've got like this grey loop in the bottom here. It just mounts onto a beam at either side of that. So the mechanism then and the servo blade here comes up into the middle of that grey area. But here's the trick. You can see see that timber quadrant there. It's a radial quadrant, right? And that radial quadrant goes down to pulleys either side of the shaft, okay? And the lines you're pulling go through from those pulleys across to other pulleys in the cockpit and pull the tiller. So what's the big deal about that? Why is it so different? Well, if you look at all the others, like the Wind Pilot and the South Atlantic and the Sea Feather, they don't use a timber quadrant, right, at all. You can see the quadrant is bolted to this shaft, this vertical aluminium post here, and they just extend that post up and they put the lines onto that post. And I'm going to shorten this up because it's getting too boring, but the difference is with a radial quadrant like that, as you're rolling it around to the extreme when the servo's going from side to side, it's maintaining a perfect efficiency with the energy coming into these pulleys and to the lines. So everything about Navic was perfect. When you're just using an arm up, it's like if you lay your mast down on the deck of your boat and run a halyard from the masthead to the cockpit and pull it, you'll never lift the mast up. But if you put a spreader halfway along and let the line go from the masthead to the top of that spreader back to the cockpit and pull it down, you've changed the angle, and that sort of trajectory means you can actually then start to pull your mast up. So that's like a mast pull. If you just have a stick sticking up and just run it to the pulley, as it's trying to pull, it'll lay down flat and it's completely inefficient. Put a radial quadrant there, it's completely efficient. So Navic is super wind vane, and that's a little bit more efficient. Why am I saying all that? Because all the others, South Atlantic, Wind Pilot, Sea Feather, all those vanes like that, they all work. They do a good job. But this is the best for sensitivity, efficiency, lightweight, all the rest of it. I sailed around the Pacific with one of those. People have sailed them around the world. They were very popular when they were available in the first mini transats and all that sort of stuff. Jean Luc, all the others, all those guys, a lot of them were using the Navic. And so it goes. But the principle, if I come back to one thing, this is the final thing I'm just going to say on this, is wrong one here. Go back the other way. This little trim tab idea is making me think now, wouldn't it be interesting? Because we allow it under the rules, but no one's done it yet. I know Dan Turk, Canadan, he's got the fittings on the back of his 580 rudder to put a trim tab there. And a trim tab on the back of a rudder is really efficient. And I'm wondering who's going to be the first one to try that out. As long as you can come up with a flip-flop vane that turns a trim tab on the back of the main rudder of the 580, that could be as efficient as the actual hydrovane at the moment. So there's a big conversation, and I just see a few people leaving because it's all getting a bit boring. But and I should say, as Renaud brought up, or Renaud's watching, it's not available, but there was a brand new one for sale. When I explained all this to Kerry back in Panama, I said, look, there's a Facebook site. I'm a member of it because I really like Windvanes. I've bought a few in the past. I just buy them whenever I see them and give them to people. I've given them away to people that I really like, just to give them a hand and say, look, this is perfect for your boat. You won't believe it. And they just go off. It's great. So, and there is a site. There's stuff around with them where you can find bits, and they do come up for sale every so often. But it's the first time I've heard of a brand new one in a box that had never been used before. But Kerry found it, but it was a bit too hard to get it into thing. So Renaud's right, you can't buy them because they stopped making them, 30 years ago or something, or more than that, But that was it's a very interesting wind vane, and they are around. You can find them occasionally. The last one I saw was must have been 12 years ago, but I haven't been looking. So But anyway, I mainly did that just to show you how efficient. And it's interesting that Renaud, I think he might even agree with me that the Navic is potentially, if you're saving weight and you're looking for something really efficient, it's a pretty cool unit, you know. Um, and the same, an Aries is a great unit, you know. It's not gonna shouldn't fail, touch wood. But you know, you've got a weight penalty. Is it going to steer? Is it going to steer a better course than the South Atlantic on the basis of the South Atlantic still running? So it's lots of interesting subjects, and this is the best part about all of the now you know the high tech super speed races around the world or across the Atlantic, like the Mini 650s. They're all electric autopilots. Why would you use a wind vane? Well, most of the cruising boats go with autopilots these days as well. But I always say, so why wouldn't you have a wind vane? You know, your electric autopilot is going to fail eventually. It has to. Anything mechanical will. And you learn that when you own a helicopter. And I've had a helicopter in the past. It's what we call it as finite stress analysis, waiting for everything to break. so a wind vane is a really good backup, and there's more and more wind vanes coming back into cruising boats now. And certainly, I wouldn't want to sail an ocean just with electric autopilots unless I had a couple and had other redundant systems. But it's nice to have an electric autopilot and a wind vane. So what you're seeing on the 580, you know, what I'm seeing anyway, is all this fascinating development or ideas about, you know, what's working, what's best, what's not. We can compare all sorts of things. And Kerry's going to be in a good position now to work out, you know, what's working and what's not. Well, Renaud's just brought up a very interesting post as well here. The most important thing with any brand wind vane is the balance of the boat, absolutely. The second point is how strong the wind vane is, yeah, absolutely. And they're all strong, but it comes down to maintenance and bearings and the little bits for sure. We can see after 1 leg and a half that the only one without problem is the hydrovane. Yeah, I agree. You know, there's no question about that at all. The hydrovane's a very good unit, and it's like brute strength. And to a degree, the Aries is the same within the servo pendulum system. So then it'll come down to what's you know what do you got with a servo pendulum? And I think with a servo pendulum, you got a bit more of this rather than some of that. And you know, so yeah, there's so many factors. So there's no right or wrong on this. It's very interesting to watch. So, but it's interesting. In fact, Dan, when he hears all this, if he sees this, Canadan, I've never really had a conversation with him, but he's got the fittings on the trailing edge of his 580 rudder ready to fit a trim tab. But I never asked him what was the caper. Did you start it? Did you do it? Did you test it? Probably not, because he bought the Sailor Mat, which was another servo pendulum system, which used to be very good. So anyway, all an interesting conversation for the sort of thing we do for weekends. Anyway, all good stuff. So I'll rewind this back here and get into any Q&A here. G'day, John. Thanks, I'm going to have to look at your site eventually, discuss that. G'day, Christine. Very expensive Nuka Hiva Romley. You got into Nuka Hiva? Oh, yeah, that's on the boat, on the thingo. Yep. So I hope you're having fun there. Jonathan, thanks. Any Chino de Mayo celebrations planned? Cinco de Mayo. You have a margarita and relax tomorrow. I'd have to Google Cinco de Mayo, and yes, I'm really ignorant. Or maybe I'm meant to know what Cinco de Mayo is, but I've not got it that far yet. I'm still growing, but sounds good. I am. After this stop, who is racing versus cruising? Well, everyone's sort of racing, but the funniest part was, listen, if you get a bit of time, have a listen to Dan's podcast with Bar Karate. Now, Bar Karate guys are a bunch of Aussies. They're crazy, absolutely crazy. In fact, this one with Dan was pretty sedate because Bicey wasn't there. There's usually three of them grilling the person who's talking. So it was a little bit more sedate than usual, but it's a good chat. And even with that one, it's very interesting. Listen to Dan talk about his efforts so far. And in a quick summary, he didn't really enjoy the transatlantic because there was too many things going wrong and they were getting hammered and it wasn't fun and he wondered what the hell he was doing there. But you got to listen to the whole story. And then he had discussions with Renaud as well on things that were going on. And then by the time he got to Antigua, he sort of got organised, but then he was still not quite caught up from Antigua to Panama, and a few other things then went wrong with the reefing gear and stuff. But now he's right into it. He's absolutely loving it, and it's very interesting because he gives a few things away subconsciously that he really is racing right now. Absolutely. So Dan is right there, as you can see. He's a great sailor, and I think he puts a lot of that credit to the advice and opinions that Renaud has been giving him on stuff. And I'm quite sure Renaud would like to see a few other people up there having a go. It makes it more fun, and the people trying. I have no doubt that Pila she's a real racing lady, well, not a racing lady, a racing lady. And she's trying hard. She's obviously got her stories. We're not sure yet what those stories are. We haven't had a good chance to speak to her yet, but I'm hoping to soon. And but yeah, she's racing, and then Kerry's obviously racing, no question there. Dan is racing. I mean, he's a bit cruisy in so many ways, but he knows how to get the boat going, and he some of it comes down to circumstance, weather, this and the other. So and Dan did actually get into, as you know, what I call the lead group. There's this lead group that's always going a little bit faster than the rest. So that lot there are absolutely racing. And then you've got the mid group, and they're still trying to go. Eric is a racing sailor. There's no question there. So whilst he hasn't got the results on the board yet, and he's still, I can't say settling into the boat because he's sailed it a fair bit now, but he's a racing guy, so he'd like to think he's racing. Jacob's turned the leaf somewhere. I'm not sure. He says he took the handbrake off, but he was actually pushing through. I don't know whether he'll be able to get up to the level of Renaud and Kerry because his boat's quite heavy. He's got a library in there, full on books, and he's got his hunting bow and arrows and bloody all sorts of stuff in there. So it goes down the line. I think all the mid-fleet boats have shown bursts of speed at different times. I think Adam was quite fast in the beginning, but then of course he had the fright with his broken ribs, and since then he's sort of, I won't say he's backed off, but he's certainly sailing a little bit more conservatively. So I hope that helps. Popeye, he's just Popeye, so I don't. Everyone wants to do a reasonably good job with what they've got going on, So that's fine. G'day, Jay, Graham. Hi, Don. Great to see you. I am no expert, but have a hydrovane with a extendable Windvane sail. It's designed for race boats and extends up to the carbon rods for very light winds. Yeah, yep, too true. So hydrovane's pretty cool. No problems at all. I have a lot of faith with hydrovanes, as many would know. But for normal sailing, it's always either hydrovane or Aries, the thing. I've actually got those lift-up Aries were irreplaceable, and I think I've still got two in the shed. And I had a third one that I bought. I tend to collect them, but I just gave that away to a mate who's restoring his boat. He's done me lots of favours, so I gave him one. Because now, people don't realise this, but and in fact, I forget what the current new Aries is pretty much like the original one, just the original Aries, and they've done some little tweaks, and they've got a fold-up blade, servo blade, and I think they're about, they're quite expensive again, like $5,000 or something, €5,000 or something like that. If you had a lift-up Windvane now, you'd pay nearly $10,000. You'd pay nearly €10,000 for a full lift-up. There was lots of issues there, and sadly, Nick was a great guy. Nick Franklin, the designer, we discussed a lot about Windvanes, and I was his agent in Australia. That's a long story as well, how I got that. But a machine he had to do this one particular casting, the main base casting, cost about $250,000 at the time, and he was using it and it broke, and he could never afford to do it. And he was about to retire, So that was the end of the lift up Aries. And every time I see one for sale, people just don't understand how good, well, don't understand where the value is. And the three that I had, one which I just gave away, and I think I've still got two left unless someone stole them. That's another story. Uh, if you can buy one for, they're priceless. That's the only way to describe it. They're absolutely fantastic, especially because you can pull things apart, have bits in the locker. You can completely repair it for like the GGR or something. And it's just a gold mine because you could have spares in the locker, and you don't even have to bend over the back of the boat. You just tip the whole thing up, pull the pins, pull it off, put it in the thing. You can have it off within about sort of 3 minutes. The whole thing out of the water and off. Just brilliant, and they're really unique. Nothing like it anyway. Anyway, would it be easy to understand your vane photos if we could see your cursor pointing out the bits you are talking about? Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. John Hubbard, this is really interesting, Don. Thank you for explaining the mystery of the wind vane. This wasn't meant to be a full explanation of how they work. I just wanted to get that principle over that, any of the servo pendulum systems are going to work the same. So Sea Feather, Wind Pilot, South Atlantic, and so it goes. There's others around as well, the Wind Pilot is, I forget what the model's called. It's a Wind Pilot Light or Pacific or something. The Sea Feather is designed for smaller boats, so that's there. The South Atlantic it's their smaller model for smaller boats. You've got the bigger ones like the Monitor, which is a copy of the Aries, and like the Aries itself, and so it goes. There's a few different ones there. They're for bigger boats. So yeah, but I'll be very interested to hear what Kerry thinks once he's sailing with the Aries. My gut feeling is it'll steer the same, but just carrying extra weight, and it'll be more reliable, maybe less work or less worry about having to tweak things and so on. Renault, the most important brand. Yeah, you got to balance the boat. Yeah, and it's a really fine line because balancing the boat, obviously, sometimes that's good to make the boat go fast anyway, but you got to balance it to your wind vane, and one wind vane might be able to take more than the other. But if it's heeling, once it starts to go, it's very hard to recover because the boat takes over. So there's a few issues there even. Graham, that said, I would also carry the standard vane. Oh, yeah, that's about the XT. Interesting info on the hydrovanes. Thanks. Chica de Mayo is a big Mexican holiday. Oh, there you go. What's the relevance of a Mexican holiday when they're all in the Marquises? But anyway, that's fine. Fabian, hi Don. Are there any other trim tab type vanes available commercially? None at all. There's not in a servo pendulum. The Navic was the only one that I know of, and it's not available anymore. But you can find them if you keep looking long enough. I'd be interested in such a system for my 208, but I thought the vane needs to be commercially available. That's Hull 208. Yeah, it does. But it's just a commercial wind vane. So in other words, if someone came along and got a Navic, for instance, and I'm not suggesting you should, it's fine. That was a commercially available wind vane. The reason we did that, and it's quite interesting because you probably all know about the Setkas. They're the little sister of the 580. They have a situation there where you're not allowed to. I think it's what it used to be anyway. They have a system where you're not allowed to have a commercial wind vane. You have to make your own wind vane, and it's a pretty cool idea because it goes to the ethos of the Setka. It's extremely low budget, a really nice little boat. They race them across the Atlantic again and all that sort of stuff. But we're the opposite. The reason I didn't want homemade wind vanes on the boat, the main reason being the 580 is designed to go around the world, and I'm quite confident that virtually every commercially available wind vane will work on the back of a 580 because that's why they're commercially available. They sell them. It was so funny. The guy who builds I won't mention his name, but the guy who builds the Wind Pilot, he's basically a bit of a nut, but his wind vane is really cool. And what happened was one of the GGR entrants in the 2018 GGR had lots of problems, huge amount of problems. And our role as an organizer was to report what's going on in the race, like I'm doing now with all the bits, with no favour, no friends. I got nothing against him. And boy, he didn't like me because I was just reporting what was happening. But now I've lost the train of thought. My statement that the wind pilot's fine, right? All the commercially available wind vanes work. If they didn't work, they wouldn't be sold. It's as simple as that, So it's pretty obvious. And then, if you read my article about learning to fly your wind vanes, it's very critical that you realise two things about wind vanes. The first one is that yes, you bolt it on the back of the boat, but it's not as simple as that. It's like when you go out with a brand new boat with a brand new engine, you got to do spanner checks. Like within the first few hours, check every nut and bolt on the engine and the mounts and everything, because they're going to vibrate and move. And then you might be able to go for 10 hours, and then you should do another spanner check on your shaft couplings and all that stuff. Then you can probably go for a week or whatever, but then you've got to do another spanner check. And one thing you learn when you're flying is that pre-flights are really important, right? That's live and die situation, quite literally. And most people complain when their wind vane breaks down. And as soon as I hear people complain when their wind vane breaks down, within reason, because some things just break, but usually it's a maintenance issue. It's a human error rather than a fault of the wind vane, because they need to be looked after and you need to keep an eye on them and you need to do what the manufacturer says. So that's a bit of simplistic argument. So it goes. So anyway, you need to look after your wind vane, but commercially available, yes, rather than homemade. And we made an exception there for the trim tab system. And we've allowed or approved anyone who wants to put a trim tab on the back, the trailing edge of the main rudder, because it's a proven principle and it's very reliable. It's so simple, Bernard Matessia was the first one to, not the first, but he did that in the early days. And I forget there was a connection with John Guswell there too. He was using model yacht wind vanes. He saw model pond yachts sailing with wind vanes, and so he then developed his own version of that and put it on Trekker. So anyway, that's the only sort of homemade option that we allow on the 580 as a class, and that's the trim tab on the back of the main rudder. But no one's done it yet. I'm not saying it's good or bad or indifferent. I'm just saying that's something that we've left there. Okay, so I think we're just about there. Rachel, is it worth reading Dan's book as you can understand his racing competitiveness a little more? No, not necessarily. Dan's book is worth reading if you get a chance. It's all about his life up until that point, and it talks a little bit about his Melbourne Osaka race. And this is the completion of a dream for him, of the whole series of things he wanted to do when he was much, much younger. And this one, I think once he's finished this, he's ticked all the boxes, I think. But no, the best thing to do is have a listen to the Bar Karate podcast. I've been on there for a few times talking. I did one recently, but I haven't publicised. I did one about 6 weeks ago. I might put the link up later on. But they're a crazy bunch of guys. And I was talking about the mini globe race, which they followed a bit. So, and Dan's back there as well because he's an Aussie. So, Rachel, is there a story behind Jasmine's birthday candle being a number 6 on her birthday cake? Oh, I'm not sure. You'll have to ask her. I have no idea, but there must be something there. What's the story with Kerry losing a sale? Oh, I may have got that wrong. I explained that before. I got a message at the time from Sid, his manager, saying that he was short of a sale or something, and so he's got to jibe down, like jibing angles going downwind because he wasn't able to do anything else. And I think I forget exact words. But anyway, the reality was that when I spoke to Kerry about that after, and I purposely didn't speak too much because I wanted to get him live on here, then we can talk about it fresh. But what he briefly mentioned was that with the servo pendulum system, the South Atlantic, which is working perfectly, right, he's not able to hold it dead downwind with the kites up, okay, because it'll start to wander and then that's it, it's gone and it starts to round up. So he was having to pick his jibe angles so to keep it clean and go from there. But we haven't had an in-depth discussion on that, and that's something. In fact, I got him a message today. We tried to do it and he disappeared. And I thought, geez, I wonder where he's gone, because I had him set to go a couple of days ago and he just disappeared. And so I gave him the link to come on here live, and then all of a sudden he dropped the news. Well, actually, I'm a bit busy at the moment. And he said, I'm fitting an Aries. In fact, I'll read you the message. It's very, very funny. And I thought, holy dooly, is he? Hang on, I've got to find it here. We get some funny messages sometimes. So, where are we? Where are we? Hang on, it's coming. Here it is. Kerry. Okay. Here it is, Don. He said, I said, where are you? He said, I'm just installing an Aries I bought from a Danish yacht. So origami is in a pickle. It means he's busy again. He's always flat out. I hope he can get this done because it's not a simple effort to fit an Aries. I'm not sure how you're going to do it. It'll have to have bent brackets, so maybe it's there. Anyway, I shall call again from offshore. I hope the Aries is not a big mistake, as I've given my South Atlantic upgrades to Adam. Right, so Adam's now got, I think, 3. He's got 3 there, and this is what he said. Just for the record, I think the South Atlantic would have worked satisfactorily if all the boats had wind pilots of that ilk, you mean Servo Pendulum one and scale. I didn't want us to, anyway, just saying how the manufacturer's been really good with him and on advice and stuff and been very helpful. So it's an interesting point, on how it goes. So anyway, so we'll hopefully get to see these guys later. Just a reminder, we've actually set it up so that they can ring, those that have got Starlink, so we'll be able to ring us anytime. Okay, we sent them an Entrant update and said anyone wants to give us a live while they're sailing out there and the conditions are good and they've got power and they can do it, all they've got to do is send me a WhatsApp message or phone me on WhatsApp. And I say, right, cool, I'll turn it on. And I'll come back and put up the basic process and then they can call in and go bang. And we can do a live. So we've got the rest of the year to think about that and the beginning of the next. So we'll see how it goes. Why am I not? Okay. Get down here. Rachel, what's the story with Kerry? Can you do an explanation, another update about how all the systems work on the sail mast or not now? Too many things going on. I'm about to sign off, but a lot of that, Rachel, that you're asking for there, you can see on YouTube. If you did a YouTube on that, you'll find out all about how masts and rigging and everything works, what challenges, obstacles encounter in the next stretch of the race. They've got to get through the Tuamotus. That's the biggest one. There's all these islands everywhere, but they've all got GPS chart plotters and they don't have to get too quick, depending on what the weather is. It'll be interesting to see how each of them tackle that. But I think it's generally accepted to go straight through the middle. Ever heard of Mark 3? No. Paul Little. Fabian, reconsidering the Mark 3 now. Oh, the Mark 3 Windvane or something, I think that is, but maybe it's a Mark 3 wind pilot. I don't know. Okay, that's it. That was a bit of a long one. Sorry about that, but it's the weekend. We're still in under an hour, and I'll hit this, and we're out of here. So thanks a lot. If all goes well, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm here for 2 more days, then I'm gone for a couple of days. So all part of the fun. Oops, so just that. What happened there? Jeepers, here we go. Now I've opened up a can of worms. I'm just trying to get out of here. I think that's there, so I'll hit this, and you might at least. Yes.
3 in the making. The McIntyre Mini Globe Race 2025. Small boat, huge adventure.